your company is developing an Azure API. You need to implement authentication for Azure API, and you have the following requirements. All API calls must be secure. Okay, let us draw the diagram. Must be, I can just draw the diagram first, because I have this, my logic is very low when it comes to reading a question. So let us look into this. So here we have your company is developing an Azure API. So we have a backend API. Okay, so there is a backend API. If you remember, this Azure API, what we have out here, acts like a front-end API. So the Azure API, what we have out here, acts like a front-end API, right? So this is our backend API. Our backend API can be in WCF, can be in MVC. So you can have a lot of backend API, and the use of the Azure API management is to go and manage all the backend APIs, right? So you can have a backend API which is WCF. You can have a backend API which is in MVC5. You can have a backend API which is MVC core, which we saw in the previous class, right? So you have the following requirements, right? Yeah, you are right. I mean C or D, but very important is D. Okay, D. Okay. First thing, definitely both of them is not. Actually, why not even basic? I'll come to that. Okay. All API calls must be secure. Okay, so anybody who makes a call here as well as here must be secure. Callers to the API, caller to the API must not send credentials to the API, right? Callers to the API must not send credentials to the API. Means what it means is that it should not happen that you are sending credentials to him and then he is sending credentials to him. So that means that this API should be secured, but the callers who are calling from here must not send the credentials out here, right? But this call out here, so this call still has to be secure, right? So let's understand it. So this call out here has to be secured. So how do we go about doing it, right? First thing, definitely the answer is not anonymous. Answer also cannot be basic, because in basic you have to send the username and password. Remember that there are various kinds of authentication, basic and so on, but basic authentication says the old style, the classic style, right? So this is also gone away. Client certificate, when he has said that the callers to the API cannot send credentials, then definitely he can't even send certificates, because certificates also means that you are sending something. So the answer is manage identity, right? But the question is that we have to see a demonstration of this, right? So how will this manage identity works, right? So the answer is manage identity. Definitely somebody answered it, but let us do a demo. Now, what exactly does manage identity means in Azure, right? So to demonstrate this answer out here, let us try to understand this word first, manage identity, and let us see that how this will work. So the question says the client will not send a username and password, right? The client will not send a username and password, and still the backend API should be secure. Again, I repeat, it says that the backend API, we will not send the username and password, still it has to be secure. So the first thing is that we need to use some kind of an Active Directory or some inbuilt function out there, right? So that's a point out there. Now, so this is the way it will work. Your Azure front-end API and this is your backend API, your own backend API, right? So both of them, what they will do is they will get registered with the Azure AD, Active Directory. They will get registered with the Azure Active Directory. So we have an Active Directory, and both of them will get registered first thing out there. Now on Active Directory, he does not know anything. He does not know that he is a person or he is a machine or he is a printer. Active Directory says that you are somebody out there, and I'm going to go and give you a username and a password, or I will give you authentication rights and authorization rights. So when you say managed identity, when you go and say that, okay, I want to go and I want that Azure AD should manage this identity, what it does is it goes and it creates an identity value to it, thinking that this Azure API back front-end API is like a person, some kind of a human, some kind of a thing out there. So he creates a unique identity out here. This is a big number, 32-bit number, and he registered it with the AD. Same, the backend API also, it goes and it gets registered with the AD, right? And now once you both of you are registered, right? So what the Azure API does is Azure API will try to hit his ID, and he will say, oh, like first let me go and ask the Azure that are you registered, right? What is this? This is termed as OAuth, right? OAuth. Now OAuth means what? So for example, think about it. You have Facebook here. You must have done a lot of times. Or let us say you have your application. Let us say, like something in your app, right? You can log into your app. You have Facebook out here, right? You are the authority person of both the websites. Authority means you have a credential here. You have a credential here. So what do? You tell to the your application that, hey, like you can be, I would be able to access through the Facebook, and then Facebook says, are you the person? So what you do as a person in between, right? You authorize that both of these applications can talk with each other for your credentials, right? So OAuth is nothing but it provides authorization between two services. So here, what exactly the answer should be, right? The way it should be is that, okay, so backend API cannot be called directly. If somebody tries to call it directly, that identity will get kicked off. Even from the for the front end API also, people cannot call directly because the identity is registered with AD, and only the people who are connected via this AD can only talk with each other. So that means now all the calls are secure, right? So let me show a demo of this, right? Again, I will repeat. I know that this is a bit difficult. Manage identity means we want Azure AD to manage it themselves, and this is also termed as OAuth, right? So here, first thing, my front-end API will get registered with the Active Directory. My back-end API will get registered with the Active Directory. And when they get registered, they get a unique identity value. Must be whatever identity 1 or some big value actually they get here, like this, a big UID number. And then my back-end API will, my front-end API will try to use the identity and try to call here, and he will then go and question AD, hey, like this front-end API, do you know him? The AD will say, yes, I know him. Please allow him to call, right? And this is that AD becomes like an authentication server, right? So let us go and do a demo here. So what I've done is, to save all the trouble and time, I have created here already an Azure API management service. So here is my API management service, and I've named this API management service as the front-end API. This is named as a front-end API. Now I'm going to go and create an app service, right? So let me create an app service, and I will create a back-end API. So already I have an API out here, the same API which we had, the index controller, right? And this API, I will try to publish it out there, right? So let's go step by step, and also let us go and refer the tutorial. This tutorial is out here. So as I've already said, guys, that it's not about the answer. It is not about, that the manage identity is answer, but it is about that you understand it. So you can see here, a lot of things are given out here. Basic authentication. If you look at this, authenticate with basic. When you say basic, that means you need a username and password. And in the answer, it was clearly specified the caller must not send the credentials, right? So definitely this is not the answer. Again, the client certificate. Here also we have to go and give him the thumbprint. You are again specifying credentials. So this is not the answer. Managed identity. Here we actually use the identity of the backend API. There is no username and password which is communicating internally. That Azure AD is acting like a trust in between and saying that you two guys, it is acting like a federated trust, saying that don't worry, like you both guys are registered with me and you can talk with each other, right? So the answer is this. The answer is that you need to use the tag authenticate managed identity, right? And in the good part is identity can be anything. I have used Azure AD. You can use the vault. You can use a service bus. You can use an storage. You can use your SQL Server database, and you can use your own Azure AD. So I'm giving the example of AD, but the point is that this can be any kind of managed identity. And if you look at out here, this is how the incoming code will be. I'll go and I'll demonstrate this code out here, but here it is. Remember, the docs are awesome out there. It's just that it's a matter that you have to just go and practice it. So this is the incoming process. In the incoming process, so this code, so here is your front-end API. So the front-end API, somebody sends a request. The front-end API, this is your inbound policy. You will write in the inbound policy, right? XML. So he will go and he will first hit the client ID of the backend API. He has mentioned it here. So client ID of the backend API. From there, this value will be stored into this variable MSI access token. And you can see out here, he's beautifully building this authorization and the bearer token. Right? So he will hit to this. AD will give him a value saying this is a token, go and pass to him. He hits to that by using the bearer token. And because the bearer token is common now and he understands it, it will work, right? So let us follow this tutorial. So first thing, I should have created this app service. Did I? Okay, so first thing is, let us go and create, okay, backend API. So there is a backend API, right? So this is a backend API. Did I create the backend API? I'm not sure. Is this created now or? Looks like, okay, so this is the backend API. Guys, did I create this backend API now? Can anyone confirm? I'm so sorry, I've lost my mind. Did I create this backend API now, the correspond backend API? Or was it created previously? Can anyone confirm? I think no, okay. So, okay, fine. So let me go and create a backend API 1 here. I think let me refresh. Yeah, that's something created sometime. So I'm going to go and add an app service. And I've just created a resource 2 out there. So correspond backend API. I will not mix with the first one. The first one is a demo for someone else, I think. API 1 and 3.1, right? And all this is out here. This is all this. So this is, we have done it 100 times, create it. And over here, I will go and I will publish my API, right? So build, publish, this is in hello world, and new, select an existing backend API. So that is my backend API getting created. I always wish that I do it before the class in a bus, but just don't remember the steps. There are too many steps out there. So do this. If you have any questions, guys, you can put down the questions out there, until this API service gets created out here. Okay, there it is. It is done. Very nice. Please put down the questions so that I can have a look at it. So correspond, no, not correspond backend API 1. I want not the correspond backend API. I want the correspond backend API 1, right? So I'll publish it out here and publish. Continue. So I can see there's a question out there by Amit sir, that what is the difference between a managed identity and JWT? Okay, very good question. Remember, all these things, JWT, OAuth, OpenID Connect, and like all these words, sometimes become very, very confusing. So it's publishing, till then, let us go and understand that. See, first thing, I talked about OAuth, open authentication. Open authentication means you have 2 websites out here, websites or services, I will say rather, or any application, right? I will say application. And between this, you want to go and create this federated kind of thing. So you go and you create a link, right? And that is what exactly is OAuth. OAuth is over here. But now when the data gets exchanged, when the data will, when he will go and send him a token, that token will be something else. That token is that unique value. So JWT token is when he sends him that token, that big number out here. So JWT token is a very small part of OAuth. So it is just a token. And why it is also termed as bearer? Because you have that word bearer token, means this is the token which the bearer holds. For example, when you go to watch a movie, that ticket, the person who holds the ticket is the bearer, right? So that's where the bearer is. We have one more thing called as OpenID. You can see our website is getting published. That is good. OpenID. What OpenID does is OpenID stands out here, or OpenID Connect. That also we'll need in the next question probably, right? OpenID says that no, over here you can go and you can pass me the username and password. So OpenID Connect is a layer on the top of OAuth, right? So that's what so bearer is just a token out here. So if you remember, we will see it again in the demo. If you remember this thing out here, when I created this managed identity means what? We are telling to Azure AD, you manage it. This is my resource, my web API, my front-end API, my back-end API, my app service. Can you manage the security of it? That is what is managed identity. So it is more related to Azure AD or Active Directory. The JWT token is a small thing. You can see here from this Azure AD, look at the first step. He will get the token, he will get it stored here. So this token is a simple value. It's a very small part of this whole thing. And that token is passed in the authorization saying bearer and the token name. So tokens thing is only this much. While managed identity means it's a whole process which the AD will do, right? So good. So let us go back here and let us see. Now, guys, definitely one very bad part about this tutorial is this tutorial is they have not given any kind of steps, to how to do it, and that's really I dislike it. They have not given any kind of steps out here. They just expect that you should know how to do it, right? So what I've done is I'm just pointing out to one of my friends' tutorial out here, and in this tutorial, this is again in the what do you call this is again as a part of the PPT out here. So this is written by Anton, and it's not again very clearly written. He has written in terms of function app. So you can see here the tutorial is written in terms of function app. Means now we have a API service, right? So he has a function app out here, right? So must be we can follow this over here. So first thing you can see here, I'll just overall tell you the steps. I will go to this Azure function. At this moment, mine is Azure API service. I will go to authentication authorization and I will say, let Azure AD manage it. I will now, then after this, I will go back to my Azure API management and I will say, let Azure AD manage this. And that's it. And after that, the other things will work, right? So two-step process. Let's go back. So this is our Azure API website. So API/index will give us that time function. And at this moment, if you see, anybody can go and invoke the time function. Remember, one of the things about this question was that you want to implement authentication. So even the Azure backend API should be protected. Front-end API should be protected. Everything should be protected. It's not that anybody can go and log in, right? So fine. So this is now getting invoked by default, right? So first thing, let us go and protect this. So I'm going to go to here to backend API. So go to resources. So backend API 1, right? First thing, let us do like this. Let us add this backend API to the Azure API management, right? So step 1, let us do this. Azure API management. Let us add. So front-end API 2, API 1, I'm sorry. So let me go and add very quickly this API out here, add API. And it is a app service. Browse that button. So ours is a backend API 1. I'll select this and I'll say create, right? So first thing is I've added that to my API management service so I can manage things with it, right? That is one part. So that it is getting added. Now the second thing is I would like to first go and register this guy with the Azure AD. It's taking time. Okay. There it is. So again, let's go back to home out here. Let's start with backend API. API app services. So let's start with our backend API 1. Slow. So must be I can write down the steps. Once again, I know that. Step 1, protect the backend API with AD. Protect means make it a managed identity. Front-end API with AD means make it a managed identity, right? Managed identity. When I say protect means managed identity. Second, the backend API, you will have a unique number, right? Client ID. So copy that client ID somewhere. Copy the client ID so that we'll need it. And then in the front-end API, in the input process or in the input rules or in the input policy, yeah, that's an official word, input policy. Go and inbound policy, right? So Amit, I'm so sorry. It's like becoming inbound policy. If you do Amazon also, you'll find all these inputs and outputs, and here it is inbound. Yeah, inbound policy. You will go and you will apply that code, which was out here. This code in the inbound policy, you will say this thing, right? And this thing, this place here, you will copy the client ID. This client ID, which you will get from here, the backend API client ID. This is the backend API client ID. API client ID. The steps only look large. The steps are only more in number, but it's actually very easy to understand, right? So protect the backend API. Step 1. Let us get started, right? Protect the backend API. So here I am, backend API. I'll go to authentication authorization, and I will say that this has to be a managed identity. At this moment, it is anonymous access enabled. So I'll go and I'll just say on this, and I will say that no, like go ahead and become friend with Azure AD. He will protect you, Azure Active Directory. And I will use the Express at this moment. So rather than using the advanced version, I'll just use the Express, and I'll just say okay, right? And I will save this. So now that means my QuestPond backend API 1 cannot be called directly anymore. That's what I expect, right? Why does it should be on? What happened? Didn't I save it? Okay, I don't know why it is. Let me see again. Must be it is just a matter of click. I don't know. I was seeing that it was not enabled. It was still showing me anonymous. Okay, so it is on out there. Log in with Azure AD. So that means now, if I try to hit this index, it should give me an exception. Good. That is good. So that means now your backend API is protected. Only the people who have access can only access it. Okay, so good one. This is happening right. Okay. Okay, now the second step. So this is done. Step 1 is done. And also, as I've said, copy the client ID. Copy the client ID. So let us go and copy the client ID. So let's go to Azure AD because that's where it is registered now. So Azure AD. You don't have to type Azure. You're not typing on Google, right? So Active Directory. So I'll go out here and let me go to my enterprise applications, and one of them is that QuestPond API or something. QuestPond backend API 1. I will go and I will copy this application ID. Don't copy the object ID, that is meant for something else. So application ID, app ID, right? Good. Let me again once more check. I think because I now used QuestPond backend API 1. I hope I've copied the right ID. Let me quickly check. Yeah, backend API 1. Good, right? Fine. So step 2 also done. This is step 1. Slow. Step 2. Now, if let us say for some reason, if the front end API tries to call the backend API, let me try this. So I'm going to go here to my Azure portal and let me try to, from the front end API 1, let me try to make a call to the backend API. I should get a 401 exception. I've already tried that through the browser, but let me try it from here. So API. Now, a couple of things out here. Our API of MVC core is API/index, right? We just need to make sure that if you want to make a call out here, let us go and change this. So this is the get out here. I'll just delete this because it just says /get. So I'm going to go and add an operation, which is get index with the API/get, with the API/index, right? So fine, but whatever it is, if I now try to call it from here, so if I go now to this get index, and if I go to test out here, and if I try to call him, he will say, no, you can't call him, right? So if I just try to test it out here, that's good. It's not 40 not found, it is 40 unauthorized, which is good, right? And the same happened to the browser. Okay, now let's go to the next step. Let's see the next step. Protect the front-end API. Okay, this is not really protect, actually. Register this front-end API, step 3. Register this front-end API as a managed service to AD. We are not actually going to protect the front-end API. Front-end API, anybody can make a call, right? I'm so sorry. We are not protecting here the front-end API. Front-end API, anybody will make a call, but whenever somebody comes to the back-end API, he will say that, are you a trusted person, right? So the front-end API has to be registered with AD, right? So I'm going to go here now to the front-end API. I'm sorry for the confusion. So front-end API, and I will say that managed identity. When you are not able to get something, you can just type here managed identities. Remember, don't go to identities. If you go to identities, that becomes basic. Managed identities, and I will say register this guy with Azure AD, right? And I'll say save here. Now, very interesting, you can see that there are two kind of managed identities. So what it will do is it will say that, okay, he will treat this front-end API as one of the user, and he will give him an identity, a unique value, right? Now the identity can be of two types. One is, you can see system assigned identity or user assigned. When you create a user assigned identity, what will happen is you can take the same identity and you can probably tomorrow pass it to front-end API 2. Or you can take the same identity and you can go and say, okay, now it is for Azure storage, right? A system identity, the life cycle of this, you can see here, is tied up to the life cycle of this resource. The life cycle of this identity is tied up only to the life cycle of the resource. That means once the resource gets deleted from here, this identity is no more valid, right? So we would like to have that, rather than, because if I go and delete the resource, it's giving me some error. So where is the front-end API? So now, we want that if the API gets deleted, even the identity gets deleted, right? So remember, identity means it treats every system out there with a username. It's like a username of your correspond front-end API, right? So now here, let us go to manage identities, and we should get some unique value. There it is. Good. So we have a unique value. We can use this as well, right? Okay, so good. We are all set. But still, if I now go still to my front-end API, I will still not be able to make a call. Let me try that. Let me try to make a call from the front-end API in the get. All right. So I'll go to the get out here, and let me try to make a call. So test, and still I should get a 401 exception because you have still not passed it as a token, right? So that is a part of our inbound processing. So I'm going to go to the inbound processing now, and that code, I will paste it out there. What this code does, I can just explain you again. He will call the backend API, means he will call this person. He will try to call him. Now, when he tries to call the backend API says, okay, can we both guys go to Azure AD and just check that you are a right person? and then he will go and he will generate a key, and that token will get stored over here in this MSI access token variable. And this MSI access token variable is then accessed through the context object and appended to the bearer and sent as a header to the backend API. And then backend API says, okay, this is the token, fine. So it is like a single sign-on you can think about, right? So I'm going to go and copy this in my Control V, and I will save it. Now, if I make call through the naked browser, so if I try to make a call through the naked browser, directly to the backend API, if I make a call directly to the backend API, the backend API won't allow me. But if I make a call through the front-end API, which is registered through OAuth in a federated trust, it will allow me, right? So let us try to do that. First thing, let me make a call directly to the backend API. So our backend API, let's see, check, this is backend API 1. Let us try to make a call directly to the get. So I'm going to go and say open in cognito mode, and you can see I can't do anything. It says that login, which is good. Now I try to make a call through the front-end API. Now I go and make it call to the front-end. When I say front-end API, means the API management service. Please understand. So now I'll go and make a call through the front-end API. Here it is. I will select the get. And when the get call is made, you will see that the bearer token is flourished automatically, right? So let me go and make a send out here, and I hope that I should see my date and time. So there it is, 200. Okay, very great. And the most important part, where is our token? So I'm going to go and see in the trace, right? So in the trace, because the token is generated in the inbound. So let me go to the inbound out here, and somewhere here, the token should be there. Why I don't see the token? Yeah, there it is. So you can see now, this is the token which has been generated from the Azure AD, right? And because of this, now the call is made, right? So in short, if you look at this question out here, again, coming back to this question, if any other questions, guys, related to this, please put it. So what does this question say? And that answer is definitely manage identity. So here it says all API calls should be secured. So your backend API, I'm sorry, I'm repeating this again and again. From external, no one can call out here because this is protected by AD, right? But through the front end API, right, you can make a call because both of these guys are registered with Active Directory of Azure. Now remember, this backend API at this moment is an app service. It can be a function app. It can be anything. So it's not that you have to just have what I've done out here, right? So now what happens when somebody makes a call to front-end API, the front-end API has a trust which is established with this guy, and he will allow him to make. But somebody who tries to make a call from outside, right, this is an external person, he is not allowed, right? So all API calls must be secured. Yes. Caller to the API must not send credentials. So no one is sending credential because this is in a trust inside the AD. So from the end user, there is no thing sent out here, right? So first thing, this answer can be answered straightforward because anonymous is ruled out, basic is ruled out, client certificate is ruled out. All of these answers are ruled out because this has user ID and password. This also has credentials, right? So the only thing is manage identity. But the most important is the concept, the demo, what I've done, right? So yeah, let us look at any questions out there. So the answer is manage identity. Let me see. If anyone knows the client ID, then anyone can exploit it. No, still not, Amit. If so, here's the question. No one can exploit this because see the token, if anyone knows the token, then what you can do, right? If anyone knows the token, then we are talking about session hijacking. For example, if you go to a movie and if anybody gets your ticket, then anybody can go anywhere and watch the movie, right? So if the token is given to someone, then that is termed as session hijacking, right? So if anybody gets this token, if anybody is going to go and sniff that token, I don't know how you can sniff that because you are already into a protected Azure virtual network. Yes, he can, right? But that's a very difficult thing because it's right. Yes, I'll explain one more time, Sandeep. I'll explain. Let me see how the caller app will make a call. So here's a question from Prabha. How will he will make a call to front end API? Here is a question. This is, see, remember, he will make a call to the front end API. How will he make a call? He will make a call to front end API. But when front end API makes a call to back end API, the back end API says that that you should be first trusted from Azure AD. So, it's like saying that, okay, like, like, so you have a person at the back end. The person at the back end says that if you come through this channel, I will agree because this is in the federated Azure AD. But if you come from another channel just trying to ping me, so for example here, if somebody goes and tries to ping that Azure from out the API from outside, he won't. But if he comes through the corresponding front end API, so in other words, what you can do is you can try this. If you want to run this through a browser, I can understand those questions. If I go and do this, it would run. This will run. Look at this. So the front end API will run. Okay, this one is a subscription key we need to provide. So once I provide the subscription key, so that's the OCM subscription API key. So that's let me do it from here. So this one is a subscription key. Remember the subscription key. What happened to my mod header? It's become blank. If you remember, guys, we had this mod header out here, and in this mod header, if I'm able to provide this subscription key, I would be able to make a call. But if I try to go directly to that backend API, I won't be able to do it. Remember, at this moment, this error I'm getting because of the headers. I think in the previous class I had explained. I don't know why this header is not manage extensions. I'll just enable and disable it. Sometimes they get just recharged again. Yeah. So here, if I go and put this subscription key, so it should work. From here, it should work. You can see now, this he can make a call. This is where the end clients will call, right? You can see there's a double protection. Again, you can see because of the Azure, what you call the API management, APIM, we have a double protection. They have given one more key, which is again helpful for protection. But if someone tries to call directly the backend API, if they try to go here, it's not going to work. This is the naked backend API at the backend. So if I now try to go out here and if I say here API/index, you can see, forget about the API/index, I can't do anything. It says login. I will first log in. If I now try to log in outside the AD, he will not allow me to come in there, right? So how he will call? He will call to the front end API like this. So hope that answers your question. Both caller and API will be in context of the managed identity. Yes, absolutely, Prabha. Both, for example, when you log in with the Facebook, you are in the, let's say you log in into some website and you say use Facebook, then Facebook ensures that you are a logged in user, right? 2042, yeah, okay. Yes. Managed identity. That identity is managed by AD. Both the identities, the front end and the back end identities are managed by AD automatically. Yes. Can we restrict only legitimate user can call the front end? Yes, you can. Absolutely. You can go and put a username and you can do a lot of things. See, at this moment, this question was saying that the person should not put a username. So that's why the answer is this. But if you say username, yes, why not? Put a username and you can do the authentication, right? So remember, for the username, if you say you have a username, let's go and see the tutorial. Remember that this was something different, but we also have basic, right? I can use the basic. Even I can use manage identity out here as well, where I can go and try to log in through a kind of an API. or through a storage, right? So I can have a username password as well, right? Okay, right. So that's the first question. My God, I like one question took so much time. And this question is of okay. Let me see some questions out there. But I'm okay with that. If one question is taking 1 hour to explain, and if today I'm able to explain you what is managed identity, I'm more happy than just trying to cover 10 questions. There was one question out here. Can you explain OAuth again? Right? I'll explain OAuth again. See, open authentication. OAuth means you have two systems. For example, uh, let's say you have some application out here, and you say that people who are in Facebook can register in this application. So if you have a Facebook ID, you can. So now you have an application and you have a Facebook app. So what you will do, there will be a what you call a kind of a tie-up which somebody has to do. Somebody has to give a consent, right? So who can give the consent? The person who is registered here as well as registered here. So let's say this is Shiv out here. He is registered here. He is registered here. So what he can do is now he can say that this app is allowed in my Facebook. This is termed as OAuth. If you see at this moment, I was doing OAuth because this was my front-end API, this was my back-end API, right? And this was my AD. So in OAuth, what we do is that you give consent because you have a credential here, you have a credential here, and Facebook is allowing open authentication. You go and say, okay, give a consent that this app can access my Facebook, definitely with some restriction, right? And then again, I've added out here, there is an OpenID Connect, OID Connect, which is a thin layer which stands on the top of this OAuth. There you can put username and password as well. Because here we are not putting any username and password. You have a username and password, but it is different, it is here. And second, very important about the OAuth is that you don't want to share your password on Facebook, and you don't want to share your Facebook password on the app. That's what the OAuth is all about, right? So, and then definitely when the trust is established, right, you pass token to and fro, and this token can be in a form of JWT, can be in a form of your simple forms authentication token, the old one, or can be in a form of any custom token, right? So token is a small subset of it. Okay, so guys, let us see the next question. We will go through the next question, but this question is much. It has the demo is much 10 times more than what I've shown the demo now. But let us try to see this question. So this is a question here, and you can see the word OpenID Connect. You can see the word OpenID Connect out there. Okay, and let's take this question. Right. So you are a developer of a software as a service company that offers many web services. So all of your web services must meet the following things. Use API management to access the service. Fine, Microsoft is selling us API management, so that is there. Use OpenID Connect for authentication. So I've already said OpenID Connect for authentication, right? So that means that there should be some kind of a credential which will be passed, and at the back end we will have something, right? It must be OAuth to do things, right? So, and a recent security audit found that all the web services which were called without authentication. So that means that at the back end, all the web services what you have, they don't have any authentication and authorization, right? So how do you go and now do things out here? Okay, you can see P now. This JSON, you can see down. I've written already. JSON P is actually for cross domain and so on. So this action is ruled out, right? Authenticate certificate. So here, when you say OpenID means username and password or something else, but not really a certificate, right? So this is again ruled out, right? And then there is something called as a check header. I'm not sure what this check header is. I've never heard this word, but the right answer is validate JWT. The right answer is validate JWT, right? Now what I've done is very quickly, I will run you through the steps, but in the next class, we will do this demo. This OpenID, so here it is. Remember, guys, the steps which are given in docs.microsoft.com, you have to really follow it. So you can protect an API by using OAuth, right? That is there, but using the OpenID as well, right? So here it is. So first thing, these are the steps. So register an application backend, register another application with the client app, tell Azure AD to grant it, and then use the validate JWT policy in the OAuth token, right? So these are the steps out here. If you see these steps, this looks like Bhavnesh has tried it. Very good. It does work. Yeah, it does not work. Yeah, I can get it. That means you really tried it. Yes, it does not work. I understand it. I don't know why it does not work. Have you tried it? What is the error you are getting? If somebody says does not work, I'm sure that they have followed this tutorial, and this tutorial actually ends up with a very bad error, and I'm not sure if so. Fine, this is the demo what is there in the next class. So if you just iterating the steps out here, I will create first a client application. In that client application, I will add my backend app. Sorry, I'll create an application which is the backend app. I will add the backend to it, right? Then I will go and create a client app, and then I will add the Azure AD to it, and then I will grant permissions, right, and so on. Oh, you have raised a ticket. They are not able to solve it. Okay, so we'll see that, Bhavnesh. I know it does not work actually. So that's why the demo is also very big. I'm sure, Bhavnesh, you must be knowing this demo is quite big. It's quite big. It takes a lot of time, right? So guys, in the next class, we'll try to do this. And must be Bhavnesh, if you can connect with me, we can have a talk on this as well. For past 10 days, I can understand. That's what the AZ204 is. Guys, just quickly, we have covered approximately now 15 questions in AZ204. A lot of people are calling me for the questions and answers. You can send us a mail directly on questpoint@questpoint.com. I'm more than happy to share with you. With this even 15 questions, you will be able to clear your 50% marks. I can tell you that. But you know, I'm so sorry that for one concept it takes me like an hour for the demo, because I don't want you to go and by heart these answers out here and go in the exam. I want you to really learn knowledge. I want you to understand the concept. I want you to see the demo. I want you to understand the concept of OAuth and OpenID, right? So please excuse me if someone is coming out here for questions. Mail us at QuestPoint and I will be more than happy to give you the answers. But I would suggest that please sit for these demos, look at the demos, look at the pain points I'm going through, and you will understand that how an actual Azure will look like when you are actually doing it on production. And as Bhavnesh has said, that he's working on this past 10 days. So all of the demos which I'm showing you out here, guys, is really hands-on practical. Means I've been working with 4 complicated Azure projects. I'm giving them support, so I understand the pain point. And what Bhavnesh is saying is absolutely right. This tutorial is out of sync. That tutorial needs some small change out there, which I will show you in the next class. So the people who are working actually on Azure, they will get such kind of issues, right? So thank you very much. We'll again connect on the next Saturday. And anybody who is doing the exam from the passing perspective, please email us. From the knowledge perspective, let us connect every week, 1 hour, and let us slowly grow. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you, Prabhat. Thank you. Yes, thanks a lot. Yeah, Bhavnesh will connect. Yeah.